Hi, everyone. This is John Daly. I'm here again with Bernie Goldberg for another episode of the No BS Zone. How's it going today, Bernie?
I wish you didn't ask me that, John. Getting over a cold. Uh, I'm gonna soldier on through. Hope we make it through the entire segment. If we don't, apologies in advance.
Well, you sound a lot better than the last time I heard you on that off the cuff, so that's good news.
Not saying much, but okay, thanks.
Right, right. Well, I was talking. We were talking a little bit before we went live here, Bernie. I had a pretty interesting weekend. I just got back from the Principles First Summit in Washington, D.C. It was a ton of fun, and I met some friends and some online acquaintances, including some longtime readers and subscribers of this website. So that was very exciting.
That's good. That's good. Tell me about the conference or the symposium, whatever it was. I'm totally unfamiliar with it.
Sure. No, Principles First, I believe this is its third year summit. It might be its fourth, but it was originally established as sort of counter programming to CPAC. They scheduled on the same weekend and in the same town in DC. It's sort of a principled conservative alternative to the CPAC clown show, and I think they actually had more people in attendance this year than CPAC did, which is great.
Oh, hold on. Say that again.
I believe they actually had more people in attendance to Principles First than CPAC did this year, and that's a 50-year institution, CPAC.
Well, that's huge. That's
Yeah,
huge.
yeah,
That's a huge piece of news.
yeah.
CPAC has become what you described it as, a clown show. Used to be a serious place for serious conservative thought. Now it's fringe, anything goes.
Yeah, and I wrote a piece about my experiences there. It just went up on the website, so people can definitely check that out. But I had a great time. There were some great debates, lots of really good people, lots of respected
What
thinkers. Um,
what was give me one theme that punched through the weekend. What one major theme?
there was a lot of talk on election integrity. Brad Raffensperger was there, talking about the importance, keeping politics out of the election process. Another
Did
one I
you talk
liked
about Trump?
was that.
Did you talk about Donald Trump?
Oh yeah, Donald Trump came up quite a bit. Yeah, for sure. It wasn't like a big bash fest. You had some people there, some speakers who some people might expect that sort of thing from, but I think it was really more of a sober, pragmatic look at today's right, where it's falling short, how it can improve. I thought that Fiona Hill was there. People remember her from the Trump administration and the January 6th hearings. Foreign policy expert, had a lot of interesting things to say about Ukraine and how the rest of the world view Trump and why they might be concerned about him coming in back into power. Um,
So I'm
lots of
assuming Steve Bannon wasn't there, right?
No, no, he was over at CPAC. It was funny. CPAC was making more headlines for sure. I know they had one of their speakers was over there, kind of praising the end of democracy, saying we started on January 6th and now we're gonna finish the
There
job.
you go.
You had actual Nazis in attendance, people that were in there and sort of tolerated this year. I get, but it's yeah, it's not. It's a very different situation, and I think even past sponsors of CPAC like Fox News didn't even, from what I understand, participate this year. So that might have contributed to the low attendance over there. But yeah, it was very well attended. I think there was probably somewhere between 700 and 1,000 attendees. I think it might have even been more than that. It was a 2-day event, so saw a lot of new faces on certain days. So I'm not quite sure the numbers, but I think they'll probably be released.
All right, let's get going.
Excellent. So we're going to go ahead and get to this week's topics. We're going to start with the GOP primary. As expected, Donald Trump defeated Nikki Haley in South Carolina, though Haley actually did a little better than people were expecting. She got about 40% of the vote, but still, it was a loss for her and a win for Trump. And we're recording this episode, Bernie, before the Michigan primary, so Haley may have lost and probably will have lost another one by now by the time this goes live. Yet she says she's committed to staying in the race. Bernie, what do you make of this? What do you think her political strategy is at this point, or do you think there's a political strategy?
Yeah, a couple of things. Even though some money has dried up, she's got enough to take her through March 5th, Super Tuesday. Why not stay in? What does she have to lose? Maybe something. Don't ask me what that something is, but maybe something that we can't see will happen and she catches lightning in a bottle. Who knows? But she has no reason to drop out before the 5th. So that's one thing. The question to me is, and she will drop out on the evening of the 5th. That you can count on. The question is, what happens after she drops out? Donald Trump, any candidate needs to unify his party going into a general election. Donald Trump has done absolutely nothing to unify the Republican Party. It's one thing to run against Nikki Haley. He's calling her a bird brain and other things like that. How is he going to win over her supporters? Some will go over because that's what historically happens. You back a candidate, the candidate doesn't win the nomination, you back the one who did. But I don't know what's going to happen this time. I think Nikki Haley's voters are up for grabs. And if Donald Trump doesn't get a substantial number of them, he's going to be in trouble. Let me say one other thing. And we've talked about this before, but it is so outrageous that I need to mention it one more time. The polls indicate Donald Trump may beat Joe Biden. He may beat him because Joe, not because everybody loves Donald Trump, but Joe Biden is so weak that independents will go with Donald Trump. But he may not beat him. Some polls show Joe Biden beating Donald Trump. But Nikki Haley would crush Joe Biden. So if you don't want Joe Biden next time for 4 more years, you could take a chance voting for Donald Trump, or you could vote for Nikki Haley and almost be assured that it would be a landslide victory for the Republican Party. And yet the Republican Party isn't doing that. It's because the Republican Party is now the Donald Trump Party. I wouldn't be surprised if before long he tells the Republican National Committee person, who probably is his daughter-in-law, change the name of the party to the Donald Trump Party. Let's make this official, because it is his party. It is not the Republican Party of Dwight Eisenhower, Ronald Reagan, or anybody else, or George Bush. It just isn't.
No, I agree, and I think similar to you, I think Haley's strategy is to stay in for now and continue to generate attention for her campaign. I think her hope is that if something takes Trump out of the race, whether it's a legal issue or something else, she'll be best positioned to pick up the pieces and accept the nomination. I don't think that's likely to happen. That Trump will be knocked out of contention in some other way. But I do think that's what she's hoping for. And you bring up a good point too about what this means. We're seeing right now there more than I thought. We're seeing South Carolina, but in some of the other states, about 40% of Republicans aren't in love with the idea of Donald Trump. They'd rather have somebody else. It's a minority for sure. But some of the polling I think is maybe even more interesting is suggests that people voting for Haley in these primaries, a lot of them, in some cases, up over 50% of those people say they won't vote for Trump in the general election. So I think that's something worth considering for sure.
Right. There's one other possibility. This is not a prediction, but it's a possibility. She could run as a third-party candidate on the no labels ticket. If they get some Democrat who isn't offensive to moderates, I'm not saying that ticket would win, but that ticket would really throw a monkey wrench into the proceedings, because there are enough people out there who don't want Biden and don't want Trump. That everybody knows. Every poll indicates that. And if they see a Nikki Haley, somebody else ticket, who knows? Enough people might vote to make it a problem for the 2 other candidates. One other thing, Jill Stein is running on the Green Party ticket in at least one, I think maybe at least one or two battleground states, and maybe more before this is over with. In a close race, if she gets 1 or 2% of the vote, Cornel West gets 1 or 2% of the vote in a battleground state. Not good news for Joe Biden, because they would be taking votes away from him, not Donald Trump.
Yeah, it'll be interesting to see if anybody ends up playing a spoiler, a third-party spoiler in this. Let's move on to the next topic, Bernie, the Alabama Supreme Court decision on frozen embryos. You wrote about this in your column on Monday. Can you give the people watching at home a little rundown of what happened and why you think it might be a political headache for Republican politicians, including those running for president this year?
What happened was the Alabama Supreme Court, in a wrongful death case, ruled that frozen embryos may be considered children. What happened was several couples had frozen embryos at a clinic in California. And it was California, right?
Shoot, I don't remember now. It might be.
Anyway, I think it was. And somebody went into the frozen area and dropped.
Alabama, right?
Alabama. What am I talking about?
Yeah, sorry.
I have a cold that's gone to my head. Apologies. So several couples in Alabama sued for wrongful death of their frozen embryos. Somebody accidentally dropped them, fell on the floor, destroyed them, and the court ruled that in favor of the couples that sued, because the court said frozen embryos can be considered children, may be considered children. You know that every reporter with a pencil and a microphone are going to throw the microphone in the face of Donald Trump and every Republican congressional candidate and say, do you think frozen embryos are children? And they're going to say, we're all for in vitro fertilization, as Nikki Haley and Donald Trump have already said. But noticeably, they didn't say how they feel about whether frozen embryos are children. This is something Republicans don't need, because anything, even vaguely related to abortion, is not an issue that favors Republicans. So even if this ruling is limited to Alabama, suburban women outside Philadelphia are going to look at this. Suburban women in Wisconsin and Michigan are going to look at this and say, Republican Party is nuts. They're just nuts. And you need suburban women, independent women in battleground states to win an election. And all I'm saying is that this isn't going to help. I'm not saying, I don't know to what extent it's going to hurt, but it's not going to help.
Yeah, I agree. It sort of reminds me of the throwback. I don't know if you remember the war on women stuff, where Democrats were playing that card about Republicans wanting to take women's birth control away, and it became a big thing. I think it was sort of successful as a political weapon, but it never really. Yeah, I always thought it was kind of grossly unfair. But what's interesting, I think the ruling in Alabama was probably the correct interpretation, just going by what was in the Alabama Constitution, specifically the wording regarding the sanctity of the unborn and the right to life. So that should probably be revisited, that wording. But yeah, the situation does create some political complications, like you said, for the pro-life crowd. And I think this could certainly put a lot of Republican politicians on the hot seat. I don't think it will hurt Donald Trump for a couple reasons. First, at this point in his political career, I think Trump is perfectly happy to throw pro-life positions under the bus. I think he thinks he's already put the work in during his first term with conservative judges. But two, I don't think anything he could possibly say on this issue would change anyone's current view of him. He's already said and done so many pretty horrible things that I can't imagine his stance on this particular issue is going to be a turning point of any kind. I think sort of the sentiment on him is kind of baked in already. What do you think about that, Bernie?
It may not be a turning point, but moderate voters matter. Republicans need to get almost all Republicans, 90% or more, to win an election. And Democrats, the same thing. They need to get 90% of Democrats. That leaves the independents. And if independents look at this issue and think it's the Republicans are at it again, that's not going to help any Republican. I mean, moderate voters may be on the fence because of Joe Biden's incapacities, but that doesn't mean they're going to vote for Donald Trump. In the end, on election day, they may say, yeah, Donald Trump, the Republicans, he's crazy, the embryo thing, he's just one of many factors. Let me just make very clear about one thing. I understand that this decision involves morality and religion. It's a moral issue for some people. When does life begin? Well, a frozen embryo is life to them. I get it, but it's also a political issue. And people can have moral issues all they want and lose elections. And Republicans have lost elections in 2022, probably lost elections in 2022 over the abortion issue. Certainly there was no red wave, and the abortion issue was one reason. I'm saying anything vaguely related to abortion, as I said, is not a good issue for Republicans.
All right, let's move to the last topic of today. Bernie, Trump has been comparing himself lately to Alexei Navalny, the Russian dissident who was poisoned, imprisoned, and effectively murdered by Vladimir Putin. Trump is basically comparing the criminal cases against him, supposedly at the direction of Joe Biden, to Navalny-style political persecution. Bernie, is Trump right? Is he basically Alexei Navalny?
Let me make two serious points, and I'm going to keep the first point very short. Trump is not Navalny, period. And the reason I'm keeping it short is because I don't want to dignify, I don't want to have a discussion about, well, I understand this. What he said was reprehensible. Navalny was a hero, a man with courage, a profile in courage. Donald Trump certainly isn't that. The other point, the other serious point, is that everything is about Donald Trump, and that's hardly breaking news. So if he could bring the death at the hands of the Kremlin, almost certainly, to himself and say, oh, you see what they did to Navalny? He was a prisoner. I'm a prisoner. He was charged indiscriminately and unfairly. I'm charged unfairly. He was a victim of a powerful government. I'm a victim of. It's reprehensible, and that's all I'm giving it, because Donald Trump doesn't deserve a serious discussion on this. His narcissism is clinically off the charts, and I'm not a doctor, and I know that, and everybody knows that, including his most loyal fans. He's a clinical narcissist, a sociopath. Add to that.
Yeah, and I did write about this topic a little bit last week. The temptation to do this, apparently, it started actually before Trump. Some of his media, sycophants were kind of pushing that angle, and he sort of embraced it and is still going with it. And just kind of I don't know if anybody needs to be reminded, but Navalny was, and I'm probably mispronouncing his name, was literally poisoned, imprisoned for life, sent to a hard labor camp, all for effectively speaking truth to power. Trump, on the other hand, he's a former, perhaps future elected president who's gotten out of all kinds of legal trouble over the years, thanks to high-priced lawyers. The guy lives in a mansion. He holds huge political rallies where he freely says whatever he wants, including lots of dishonest things. And, it should go without saying, though it should be repeated. The U.S. legal system is not the Russian legal system. Trump is being lawfully tried over actual crimes and civil complaints. There's a good argument to be made that some of this is politically motivated in some of these cases, that's for sure. But Trump has the opportunity to appeal every court ruling against him, including all the way to the Supreme Court, in front of 3 justices who he appointed himself. So he has lots of advantages that Navalny did not, and this is it's kind of hard to read and listen to these comparisons.
Here's the most interesting thing to me, and interesting not in a good way. Trump can say anything, and as far as 20 to 30% of his supporters go, they'll believe it. I want to make clear, I mean that literally. He can say anything, and they'll believe it. And to the extent that they don't literally believe it, they don't care. So 20 to 30% either literally believe anything he says, the election was stolen is the best example, or they don't care if it's true or not. He's their guy. You know, people think Trump has supporters despite his nastiness and his craziness and all that. No, I don't think that's true. I think he has supporters because of that, because of his nastiness and craziness, because he's outlandish and outrageous, and because he, whatever else you think of him, his policies and all that. I'm so tired of hearing about that. But he's clearly unfit for office in terms of character, just in terms of character. Not saying he was a bad president otherwise, but besides that, Mrs. Lincoln, how was the show? You know, character matters in a president. He's clearly unfit for office in terms of character, but his supporters don't care. 20 to 30% do not care. And I'll repeat the cliche I've used before, his words. He can shoot somebody on Fifth Avenue and wouldn't lose any support. Absolutely true.
I agree. That for many people, his persona is a feature. You know, it's something they like. They like the entertainment factor. They like the anger. They like the energy. And, you know, again, it'd be interesting. I don't know. I've always sort of asked myself that same question too. How many people actually believe him, or they just want to tell themselves what he says is true while knowing it probably isn't, but they just don't care. But yeah, it's a thing. I wish the Republican Party, like I said, would just nominate somebody else, and we'd be I think much healthier as the Republican Party would be. I think the nation would be. But you know, it looks like we're going to get Trump, Biden, and you know, you and I are fans of neither man, and we both see them as not being good fits for the White House. But that's probably.
Let's end on that happy note. Biden v. Trump. Trump v. Biden 2.0. By the way, Trump's going to be the nominee. The jury's still out on whether Biden is going to make it all the way through the convention, or all the way to November. Everybody I speak to says he won't make it. And I tell them with every passing day, it's more likely that he will. He's a stubborn man. He's a selfish man. He's not concerned about the United States. He wants to be president for 4 more years because he thinks he did such a great job in the first year. Then he could become either LBJ or Franklin Roosevelt all over again. And he doesn't care. They say Donald Trump doesn't care about the country. Yeah, I believe that. Neither does Joe Biden. Let's end with that. Give me the last word on that, John.
No, I think that's right. I think with both those guys, it's ego over country, and it's not a good thing. So let's go ahead. Yeah, on that happy note, Bernie, let's go ahead and wrap things up. We're trying to keep these episodes a little tighter than we have in the past. People, I think, like them a little tighter. So I want to thank everybody for tuning in. I want to thank all the people I met last weekend. Again, number of subscribers here. They were very, very cool people. Bernie, you have yourself a great day. All right.
You too, John. Bye-bye.